The Underwater Menace. The real version, the actual version that we were supposed to get in 2015. But yet, this is a quick rundown of what happened in 2015.
What on God's earth happened to this release? What on God's I cannot believe the state they released this DVD.
Sir, I don't think releasing this without promising animation will be a good move.
Money, money, money.
People will think we are money-grabbing pigs.
Money, 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 money.
Sir,
money.
Can you listen
money,
to us for
money,
fuck's sake?
Money.
This release literally haunts my brain and every poor soul who paid for it. So I looked at the original DVD release, or what I will name as the abomination of the DVD range, almost 8 years ago. Yep, 8 years and I'm still doing the same shit. Depressing. But lo and behold, we have the actual animation release we're supposed to get in 2015. But at the time, the heads of the BBC were so indecisive numpties, they released a literal trash can, which offends the very core of my existence, that I actually paid money for it. But now we can forget about the past, and focus on the present, as here, we have in its glory, the Underwater Menace animation release. Obviously, everybody knows that I'm a giant 1960s Doctor Who freak, and the second Doctor era is my favourite era of the show's history. Too many classics with amazing Dalek stories, the Golden Age of the Cybermen, the Yeti stories with the eerie Great Intelligence, the Basement to Siege formula, and also the Earthbound formula. Some of my favourite Doctor Who stories of all time belong in the second Doctor era, with my favourite Doctor Who story of all time, the War Games. But despite being my favourite era of the show, it's not a perfect era. And the Underwater Menace isn't regarded as a very good Doctor Who story. In fact, it's quite heavily attacked for being titled and called B-movie, cheap, and a little ridiculous. I agree with those statements, and Doctor Who was adjusting to a new change and took quite some time to adjust, such as the inconsistent execution of the second Doctor's delivery and characterization in Power, Highlanders and the Underwater Menace, as one of the main points of contentions in the era, but one I sympathise with because it's the first time actually going through the process of regenerating the Doctor. Not only am I going to comment on the animation, but I will be reviewing the story itself. So finally, let's review the real Underwater Menace. Whether or not the Underwater Menace looks like a cheap B-movie adventure with over-the-top acting, to you, and utilising a very unconventional delivery in terms of not really incorporating a popular formula, which the second Doctor era is famous for. And again, one of the points of contention some people have with the second Doctor era, that it's rather formulaic. So the Underwater Menace in terms of formula actually does stand out. I admit that the plot is fun, with the Doctor, Ben, Polly and Jamie venture into the heart of Atlantis, the supposed long-lost city, against one of the biggest lunatics in Doctor Who. This guy. The animation I would rank below the Moonbase, but if you're familiar with the Abominable Snowmen, Faceless Ones, the Macroterror and so on, you know what you're getting here, and I prefer it in black and white more. That's how I'm going to refer to the story. And what the hell is happening here? I would say the animation in just minor places, not many scenes but just a few, the animation does look a little clunky, but that's just only very minor scenes. Again, I'm not going to expect a flawless masterpiece of animation, even though I think the Moonbase is the closest thing to that. It's still pretty good, and I would rank it over the previous animations that we got. Those animation releases suffered from very open and empty set designs, and kind of rubbed me the wrong way because it wasn't really playing faithful to the actual story, whereas the moon-based animation and stuff like the 10th planet was more faithful to what these scenes would actually look like if the film existed, or more focusing on what the actual budget was in the story, and not really going for something a bit grandiose in terms of developing the animation and the scenery. So it's up to personal opinion of what version you prefer. So the Doctor and the TARDIS team land near a cave entrance that leads into the heart of Atlantis. The opening episode, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I was enjoying the Underwater Menace. So the supposedly terrible second Doctor story with a rather questionable reputation, it goes to show having some form of representation besides just audio and still images and a recon goes to show that maybe if the Space Pirates was animated, or something like the Smugglers, that would change my tone and perception on the story. The false sense of security in episode 1, very alien and weird music and the sound design, it's unconventional, it stands out. Some people would 100% say it's very jarring and monotonous, it will split 50-50. Ironically, the lunatic Zaroff is the individual to save the Doctor and the companions from being feasted upon sharks, and Zaroff saves them from their predicament about information regarding Atlantis. Zaroff is played by Joseph Hurst, is something else. This story is something else. Polly is threatened to be turned into a fish, which the censor clip is legit something out of a horror movie. Yeah, part 1. Besides some rather interesting scenes, I enjoyed it. It quickly establishes a weird setting, the strange and unconventional characters. We don't know Zaroff's intentions just yet, but you know that he's an oddball himself. Despite being around a bunch of cult-like members who worship the city of Atlantis, the cult-like members aren't the weird ones. Especially when they're standing right next to Zaroff. He is the one who is an oddball. Which goes to show how utterly weird this man is. You see, BBC, when you put effort into something, you might actually give some positive light to missing episodes. Which, quite frankly, you regressed the Underwater Menace for many people. But that is now being rectified, so all I will say now is fair play. But let's not get carried away here. Even though the flaws I have with this story come later, not specifically connected to episode 1, I don't really have any major issues with episode 1. I think themes are set up pretty well, and I like the unconventional delivery. But as I said, with the opening of episode 2, this is pretty horrifying. Turning Polly into a fish. And as well, the Doctor destroying Zaroff's ego by saying the equipment is old and doesn't impress is funny as hell. Zaroff looks like he wants to blow up into a nuclear bomb. Yeah, this guy really needs to go outside more. Perhaps get a new hobby or something. Zaroff is attempting to drain the water to reveal Atlantis. They'll create a chain reaction of water with the Earth's core that would be an earlier version of Inferno. Yep, this guy's a nut job. Meanwhile, Ben and Jamie are sent to the mining area, and good God, does this drilling sound get monotonous. It's so bad, it will give you permanent tinnitus. Despite episode 2 being one of the most recent episodes recovered back in 2011, I know it feels like flipping ancient times, but still it's one of the recent ones. It's actually one of the weaker episodes in the Underwater Menace. It does struggle to move the plot. It's by no means poor. It's just a lot of wandering, a lot of padding, and the plot is quite stationary. The priest Ramo, who is nervous about Zaroff, calls him a destroyer and completely insane. I mean, where did he get that idea from? It's honestly shocking that nobody else thinks Zaroff is a complete nutter. But commenting back on the music, which might put some off. It's jarring like the Silurians. If you like this alien but cult-like music, it will work really well for you, especially with this unnerving chanting in episode 3 in particular, when ceremonies and sacrifices are performed. The Doctor and Ramo try to convince the ruler about the situation with Professor Zaroff. Let's see how it went. Didn't really work well. But my word, this guy is a complete moron. Is there truth? Yeah, like how Zaroff would tell you the damn truth. This guy is such a lemon. Zaroff criticizes and mocks their religion. You're surprised this guy even follows his voice. This guy is just a moron. Truth is, Zaroff is a persuasive individual, which is crazy considering he's just an insane individual, on the cult by playing on their own vanity of what they want to achieve by resurrecting Atlantis. But what haven't we mentioned here? What part do the fish people play? On the original cover of the DVD, they're right slapped on the front cover. Same with the audio, that they were a big part of the story. No, they are not. The only thing remotely that they get screen time on is episode 3 of them just swimming around with this painful music loop. It will drive you insane and you will look like this guy. They had pretty much nothing. The only part they play is a rebellion to stop food supply, and as I said, the most jarring scene in Doctor Who history, which is you're just begging it to end. But it's just so jarring and monotonous and just lasts so long, it does outstay its welcome. The music on loop would drive the most sane person into complete insanity. So when Zaroff is captured, he has an attack. This is how it turns out. Whoa, didn't see that coming. So this version of the Underwater Menace doesn't use what I call the dreaded version of Nothing in the World Can Stop Me Now. It doesn't use it, which the BBC and the people who put this DVD together, this release together rather, knew that this was a poor, awful version and take of Nothing in the World Can Stop Me Now. But the release didn't use it. Just listen to this.
Nothing in the world can stop me now!
He just sounds so fed up at the story and just wants to die. I mean, when I first experienced that, I was in shock and awe that it was that awful. I'm glad the editing team thought so too, because my word is it bad. Episode 1 and 4 are much more easier to enjoy compared to this pile of garbage. The Underwater Menace is now, I can say, enjoyable. It is not the best in the era, not by an absolute long shot. Does it stand out? In terms of formula, yes, because it's not following the traditional Second Doctor formula. In short, I give episode 1 and 4 a 6 out of 10. Episode 2, funny enough, as I stated, I find the weakest episode. It's pretty padded, but is the animation worth it? If you don't have this release, I would say 100% get it if you do not own the story. Or you can wait a bit when the price goes down. You will definitely enjoy the Underwater Menace more watching this rather than watching this. So it depends if you really care about the Underwater Menace as a story. Even though I don't sing its praises, at the end of the day, it is my favourite era of the show. And I am a reviewer. But this was worth the money to me. And it actually made me like the Underwater Menace a little bit more. From a 5 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10. So, it improved it to me. I do not consider it a bad story, but I do consider it a flawed story. The criticisms, drawbacks it gets, I understand. but now the drawbacks relating to this no longer matters. This is now the most pointless release of all time. Get this. Overall, The Underwater Menace is Doctor Who doing a 1960s B-movie plot in quite a strange time in Doctor Who, with the Doctor's characterization being inconsistent. You can see the transition to the moon base making the Doctor more consistent. 8 years ago since I reviewed this abomination, and now we've got the real thing. The animation gets a thumbs up for me, which I will give an 8 out of 10. Clunky in some places, but a definite improvement over its previous ones. I just prefer the Moonbase and 10th Planet versions more, but the story itself I give a 6 out of 10. It's gone up slightly from the ranking video, but its position stays the same. The only way to top this release is episode 1 and 4 miraculously gets found and we have the Underwater Menace Special Edition. And then I'll be here again reviewing it. I've reviewed the Underwater Menace twice now. Didn't expect that to happen, but I'm not mad about it. Because now the Underwater Menace is a 6 out of 10 for me. Thanks for watching.